Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. So I went through the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree twice. Let's do a review. Calling it a DLC or expansion really feels as if I'm doing it a disservice. It's like another game within the main game. I've heard it called Elden Ring 1.5 or Dark Souls 4, and I think those are very apt descriptions. I showed a meme in a community post of a From Software game being a monster burger, and the DLCs being more burgers on the side. But in this case, I think 2 monster burgers side by side is in order. The number one thing that impresses me about Shadow of the Erdtree is the overworld map and how it is constructed. It feels like you took your average Souls game 2D map and crumpled it into a 3D ball and added connections everywhere where the paper touched. It felt like Dark Souls 1, which already felt kind of open world, blown up to a true open world size. I loved navigating by map through the base game, but this was literally on a different level because I had to think above and below me as well. If I didn't stumble on the next area by chance, I had to guess where the connection might be by looking at the map, and when it turned out how I guessed, that was a great feeling. I felt like I solved a puzzle. If it didn't lead where I hoped and I just discovered something else, that was cool too, unless it was that damned Fly Guy village. The maps for Elden Ring and then the depths in Tears of the Kingdom made me realize I enjoy orienteering, and it makes me want to seek out other games with good map gameplay. And of course, the art direction in Elden Ring for all the different areas is amazing, so it was a joy to be in the world, even if it is decayed and creepy and hostile. And then part of why Shadow of the Erdtree feels like a different game from the base game is because the art direction is different. It feels like the same world, but they have pretty different identities, similar themes, but dissimilar ways of presenting them. One thing very much in common about the presentation is I often felt a lot of awe playing the game, and it came from the world feeling big and me feeling small. And I'm not talking about square footage, I'm talking about like the feeling when going to Yosemite National Park or the Grand Canyon. The scale and the beauty and the indifference of Mother Nature hits you, and you feel insignificant. And then there are events going on within the world, gods and lords grasping for power, wars being fought, entire peoples being subjugated or eliminated. And so in that context, the story of rising from nothing to become Elden Lord is made all the more powerful. Getting back to more mundane critiques of the map, Shadow Keep as a game area was super impressive, enormous, and also connected to many, if not most, of the areas in the game. One of the more memorable moments of the playthrough was coming to the Shadow Keep from the west, wondering where the road would take me, and then it led me into the Black Keep, but to a section I had not been to before. I went in there thinking it would connect to where I had been before, but it didn't. It went through and around, and I was amazed. It was still a full area. It reminds me of Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls 1 as like a hub, except we don't start there, and then it is hostile to us. Next, we can talk about the difficulty, which also left a big impression on me. It was quite tough at first, and a shock. But again, with Elden Ring, we have ways available to us to modify the difficulty, and by using more or less modifiers for different areas or bosses, I ended up finding the whole thing very manageable overall. But from everything I've seen, I'm going to come to the conclusion that Elden Ring is the hardest Souls game to go through solo. I heard about the idea of the bosses being balanced around summons, and I was wondering if that were actually true, but now I think I can say that that idea makes sense. And I guess we can transition into talking about summons here. When I started Elden Ring, I saw summons for what they were, a new mechanic previously not in previous Souls games, so I wanted to try them out. They were fun and interesting, lore and gameplay-wise, but comparing my boss clears with clears of folks who played solo, I saw the difference in difficulty. I really didn't spend hours on any boss in the DLC, and I see the difference between Elden Ring bosses and the bosses of previous Souls games. I've heard folks compare the Elden Ring bosses with Bloodborne bosses, but no, I think for the most part they are crazier than that. Maybe Orphan of Kos is the one that could be in Elden Ring. I just got Platinum in Bloodborne. I know I can handle Bloodborne solo, but I don't know if I can handle Elden Ring solo. And on that topic, I would like to attempt Elden Ring solo someday, but I'm in no rush. The way I look at it, enjoying the exploration of a new Souls game can only be done the first playthrough, but enjoying the first solo run can be done the second or the 10th or the 100th playthrough, so I can save it for later. I'm savoring it. I'm looking forward to the opportunity. And then before I do that, I would want to know what build or theme to go with anyway. So all these different playthroughs I'm doing are kind of prep for that future solo run. Regarding the Erdtree fragments, I know they are controversial, but I'm mostly fine with them. They are a decent solution to a problem with no perfect answer. I blazed through the DLC of Bloodborne in an afternoon, beating all bosses in 2 tries. I will never stop reminding people of that. But yeah, it might have been because I was overleveled at 150, or maybe I was just super lucky, or maybe I was using the best weapon in the game, the rifle spear. But the Elden Ring DLC with the Erdtree fragment system will prevent that overleveled situation. They are the great equalizer. And I think the biggest goal of the Erdtree fragment system for From Software was to make it so that everybody's game experience would be similar starting out, whether we are level 100 or 150 or 200 or 713. For now, I personally like to get my characters to around 200 going into the DLC. That way I can hit soft caps on my most important stats and have enough stats elsewhere to try out most things. In the future, when I create specific builds built around, 1 or 2 ideas, then I can maybe go with lower levels. But I'm wondering if the trend overall is going to drift to level 200 anyway. And I would encourage anyone going through the DLC for the first time to go level 200 or higher. Talking again about bosses in the DLC, they seem to fall into 2 major categories, which they also did in the base game, and in Bloodborne, and in Dark Souls 3 to a lesser extent. But that is normalish bosses that are in the spirit of previous Souls games, and then the sugar high bosses. I hope that term doesn't offend anyone, but these are super fast and super mobile, with constant long combos and very short punish windows. Of course, I prefer the former type. I don't enjoy the latter. But I suspect in future FromSoft games, they will lean more heavily on sugar-high bosses. I can see where From Software is coming from. They have to raise the challenge level for the long-time players, but if it goes too hard in that direction, I might be kind of reluctant to play the new game and just go back and play the old games instead. And I've said it before, but Elden Ring, and now its DLC, may be the last new release games I ever need to play. It checks a lot of my personal boxes, which I talked about in my base game review. I'll link to that below. It may become my Skyrim, and I just play it and other Souls games for the rest of my life. The biggest reason I did not get a PlayStation 5 and got a PlayStation 4 Pro instead is because I'm not really interested in getting into the cycle of looking forward to new releases, playing a new game, and then beating it and then moving on to the next fix. I got the PlayStation 4 with a very specific list of games in mind. Nier Replicant, Armored Core 6, the Eco series, Bloodborne, the Souls series, and then this is kind of the finale, Elden Ring. And now that I have all those, except a current generation Eco, I'm satisfied. Of course, I'm very interested in future Nier or Eco or Souls releases, but I'm not going to fill the time until then bouncing between this or that new release. I haven't talked about the story or the NPCs yet. I love it all, but I want to talk about that in its own video, especially the last boss and the implications there story-wise. I think it's all very interesting. I'll save that for a future video. But in a nutshell, Elden Ring is role-playing, not only making decisions about how to build our character or what order to do things, but also making decisions that affect other characters and the world. The stakes feel high, the setups and payoffs are strong. So in conclusion, the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC is amazing, a game within a game, and all the previous From Software DLCs simply can't compare on scale. We can argue about which has our favorite bosses and weapons and music and worlds, but talking about scale, it's comparing apples and monster burgers. Alright, that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.